What if the most powerful pharmacy in the American West wasn't a building? It was the ground beneath your boots. Before drugstores, before prescription bottles, before ambulances, there were the open grasslands of the Great Plains. And two very different groups of people, Native Americans who had called these lands home for thousands of years, and cowboys riding cattle trails across the frontier. Both turned to the same plants growing right under their feet when sickness or injury struck. These weren't guesses or folklore fantasies. Many of these remedies are now backed by modern science. Several of the medicines we use today trace directly back to these plants. And in a time when the nearest doctor might be 100 miles away, knowing this green pharmacy could mean the difference between life and death. Today, we're walking through 11 healing plants of the Great Plains, plants that both Native Americans and cowboys used, trusted, and relied upon. Let's get into it. The Great Plains stretch across the heartland of North America, from the Canadian prairies down through Texas. This vast landscape holds more than 3,000 plant species, and Native American tribes of the region used hundreds of them for food, ceremony, and medicine. As ethnobotanist Kelly Kindsher documented in Medicinal Wild Plants of the Prairie, Plains Indians found medicinal value in more than 200 native prairie plant species. When white settlers and cowboys moved through these lands, they learned from native healers, adopting many of the same remedies out of sheer necessity. As historians note, every plant species later used by frontier doctors was used first by Native Americans. These 11 plants represent the most widely shared, most historically verified, and most scientifically supported crossover between two worlds. Plant 1, Echinacea, purple coneflower. Let's start with arguably the most famous plant to come out of the Great Plains, Echinacea, also known as the purple coneflower. Echinacea angustifolia is native to the Great Plains, and it was described by researchers as the most widely used medicinal plant of the Plains Indians. At least 15 tribes, including the Lakota, Cheyenne, Kiowa, Crow, and Ponca, relied on it for a wide range of ailments: coughs, colds, sore throats, toothaches, wounds, infections, and even snake bites. The Crow tribe is recorded as believing Echinacea had the greatest medicinal value of all plants. The Cheyenne would chew pieces of the root and let the juice trickle down the throat to treat sore throats and tonsillitis. When cowboys and frontier settlers came across this plant, they adopted it quickly. By the late 1800s, Echinacea had become a key ingredient in commercial remedies sold across the United States and was even exported to Europe. Today, modern science confirms what the Plains peoples already knew. Research validates Echinacea's ability to stimulate white blood cell production and reduce the severity and duration of colds. Plant 2, Yarrow, Achillea millefolium. On the frontier, a deep cut far from help could be deadly. That's why both Native Americans and cowboys prized yarrow above almost any other plant for wound care. The Navajo called yarrow life medicine. The Pawnee chewed yarrow stalks for pain relief. The Cherokee drank yarrow tea to reduce fevers and induce restful sleep. Across many Plains tribes, the feathery leaves were pounded into a poultice and pressed directly onto open cuts. Yarrow's astringent compounds help blood clot fast and fight infection. Cowboys and frontier pioneers learned this directly from native healers, carrying dried yarrow in their saddlebags for emergencies on the trail. Yarrow tea was also taken for stomach aches, fever, and joint pain. Modern research confirms that yarrow contains flavonoids and alkaloids that support wound healing, reduce inflammation, and aid digestion. It is still widely used in herbal medicine today. Plant number 3, willow bark, Salix spp. If Echinacea is the Great Plains immune booster, willow bark is its painkiller, and one of the most scientifically validated plants on this entire list. The inner bark of willow trees contains a compound called salicin, which the human body converts into salicylic acid, the precursor to modern aspirin. Native American tribes across the plains, including the Lakota, brewed decoctions from willow bark to treat headaches and fever. The Blackfoot used it in similar ways. It was also applied as a poultice for wounds and cuts. Cowboys on the frontier boiled willow bark into bitter teas when suffering from fever, muscle pain, or the aches of trail life. Willow trees are common along creek beds and rivers across the Great Plains, easy to find when you needed them. Modern aspirin, developed in the late 1800s, was directly inspired by the salicin compound found in willow bark. The medicine didn't come from a laboratory. It came from indigenous knowledge that had been in use for centuries. Plant 4, sage, Artemisia spp or Salvia spp. Sage is one of the most recognizable plants of the American West, and its role in Plains culture goes far deeper than cooking. For the Lakota, Navajo, and many other Plains nations, sage held both spiritual and medicinal importance. It was burned in purification ceremonies and smudging rituals, but it was also brewed into teas to treat colds, fevers, and digestive problems, and used as a poultice for wounds and skin infections. Cowboys learned to use sage for many of the same purposes. It was one of the most accessible plants across the entire Great Plains, practically impossible to miss. A simple sage tea was a go-to remedy for stomach trouble on long cattle drives when food quality was questionable. Modern science has confirmed that sage contains antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, and antioxidant compounds. It is used today to support respiratory health and has demonstrated antibacterial properties. Plant 5. Elderberry, Sambucus canadensis. Elderberry has had a resurgence in modern herbal medicine, but Native Americans and frontier people were well ahead of the curve. Native Americans, including tribes of the Great Plains region, used elderberries and elderflowers extensively. The berries were cooked into syrups or poultices to treat fevers, colds, and inflammation. The flowers were steeped into teas to soothe sore throats and respiratory conditions. Elder bark extracted in animal fat was also used as a healing salve, and dried elder flowers were used as a tonic for fevers. Settlers and cowboys adopted elderberry as a reliable cold and fever remedy, particularly in areas where elder shrubs grew along rivers and creek banks, which are common throughout the plains. It's important to note, raw elderberries are toxic and must be cooked before consumption. This was understood in traditional use. Modern research confirms elderberry's antiviral properties, and it remains one of the best-selling herbal supplements in the world. Plant 6. Prickly pear cactus, or Punchear spp. Out on the drier stretches of the Great Plains and into the Southwest, prickly pear cactus was one of the most useful plants a person could find. Native Americans made poultices from the mature pads of the prickly pear as an antiseptic and wound dressing for cuts, burns, and boils. Tea was made from the pads to treat urinary tract infections and support the immune system. The Comanche and Apache taught settlers about these uses, and vaquero traditions, the Mexican cowboys, also incorporated prickly pear for wound dressing, a practice that spread to Texas cowboys and frontiersmen. Cowboys on the southern plains found prickly pear an accessible, reliable field remedy in a landscape where other plants could be scarce. Modern research has validated prickly pear's ability to help lower cholesterol and regulate blood sugar, suggesting it may play a role in preventing diet-related cardiovascular disease and diabetes. Plant 7. Chokecherry, Prunus virginiana. Chokecherry was so important to the Cheyenne and Blackfoot that some tribes simply called it the berry. No further description needed. This shrub grows widely across the Great Plains and Rocky Mountain region. Native American tribes used different parts for different needs. The bark was used to treat diarrhea, the root addressed kidney problems, and the fruit was eaten fresh or dried for winter nutrition. The Crow tribe also used it for its wide range of applications. Cowboys and settlers adopted chokecherry bark tea as a reliable remedy for digestive upset and diarrhea, a very real problem on the trail with unpredictable water sources and food conditions. It is worth noting that chokecherry leaves, seeds, and bark contain compounds that release cyanide and should never be consumed raw in large amounts. Traditional use involved careful preparation, particularly boiling or drying. Plant 8. Goldenrod, Solidago spp. Goldenrod is a familiar prairie wildflower often overlooked today, but on the Great Plains, it had a strong medicinal reputation. Native Americans used stiff goldenrod, Solidago rigida, as an antiseptic and astringent to stop bleeding. The leaves and blossoms were ground into preparations to treat all kinds of hemorrhaging. The flowers were also used in a lotion to treat bee stings. Cowboys and frontier settlers adopted goldenrod as a field remedy for cuts and wounds, especially where bleeding needed to be slowed. The plant was common, recognizable, and easy to use. Modern herbalists continue to use goldenrod, particularly for its anti-inflammatory and diuretic properties, and research supports its traditional uses. Plant 9. Wild licorice root, Glycyrrhiza lepidota. Wild licorice root is native to the Great Plains and was a trusted remedy among multiple plains tribes. The Blackfoot and other tribes dried the roots and used them in teas to reduce swelling in the stomach and throat and to treat sore throats and inflammation. It functioned as a soothing, anti-inflammatory remedy in a landscape where throat and chest ailments from cold, dust, and exposure were common. Cowboys in the field sometimes chewed licorice root for its soothing properties. It had a distinctive sweet flavor that made it recognizable and pleasant compared to other bitter plant medicines. Modern research has confirmed glycyrrhizin, the active compound in licorice root, has anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial properties. It is used widely in herbal medicine and food preparation to this day. Plant 10. Sweetgrass, Hierochlorodeata. Sweetgrass is one of the most sacred plants in Plains Native American culture, and its medicinal applications were real and practical. Widely used by the Blackfoot and many other Plains tribes, sweetgrass was burned as a form of purification and smudging, its sweet smoke believed to cleanse and heal. But it was also brewed into a tea and drunk to relieve coughs and respiratory irritation. Its calming aroma made it valuable for what we might today call stress relief and respiratory comfort. Settlers and cowboys who spent time with native communities became familiar with sweetgrass and its uses. In a dry, dusty environment, a simple sweetgrass tea for a chest cough was practical medicine. Sweetgrass remains a sacred and culturally significant plant for many Plains tribes today, and respectful engagement with it, including sustainable harvesting, remains important. Plant 11. Wild bergamot bee balm, Monarda fistulosa. Our final plant is one that bridged practical medicine and everyday comfort for both cultures on the Plains. Wild bergamot, also known as bee balm, is native to the Great Plains and was used by multiple tribes including the Lakota. The leaves were made into teas and applied as poultices for fevers, colds, and respiratory infections. It also had topical uses for skin irritations and infections, with its natural thymol, the same active compound found in modern time, giving it genuine antiseptic properties. Cowboys would have encountered wild bergamot along prairie meadows and roadsides. Its aromatic leaves made it easily identifiable, and brewing a simple tea from it was accessible to anyone on the trail. Thymol, the active compound in bee balm, is still used today in antiseptic mouthwashes and throat lozenges, another example of traditional plant knowledge making its way into modern products. Two groups of people, Native Americans with thousands of years of accumulated knowledge, and cowboys navigating a rugged frontier far from modern medicine, both looked at the same prairie landscape and found the same answers. That's not coincidence. That's the result of careful, generational observation of the natural world, and in the case of the cowboys, it was often knowledge shared directly by native healers who had perfected it long before the frontier era. As ethnobotanists and historians have documented, every plant remedy used by frontier doctors and settlers was used first by Native Americans. The Great Plains wasn't just cattle country, it was one of the richest open-air medicine cabinets in the world. These 11 plants are a window into that history, authentic, documented, and validated. The land knew how to heal, and the people who lived closest to it knew how to listen. If you found this video valuable, like and subscribe for more deep dives into history, nature, and forgotten knowledge. Drop a comment telling us which of these plants surprised you most. We'll see you in the next one.